Good evening, and welcome to the AJP Northeast Asia market close. Oil is back above the market, but investors are picking their spots with Samsung carrying Seoul, energy and AI hardware bucking a weaker Shanghai market, and Tokyo closed after a sharply higher Monday session. One pressure hung over all three markets today: oil. Crude prices climbed as U.S. Iran negotiations stalled, reviving inflation concerns just before this week's U.S. consumer price report. But the equity response was highly selective. Korea's KOSPI finished up about 0.7%, with Samsung Electronics rising more than 4%, while SK Hynix barely moved and Samsung Electromechanics fell. Shanghai, still trading, was down about 0.5%, even as CNOOC jumped more than 5%, and two major artificial intelligence optical module makers rallied. Japan was closed for Mountain Day, but its latest session tells the same story. The Nikkei rose more than 2% on Monday, led by Advantest, even as SoftBank Group and Fast Retailing fell. Across the region, the headline index moves are hiding a much narrower contest underneath. The KOSPI closed up about 0.7% at around 6,358, extending its recovery after the technology-led sell-off earlier this month. But Samsung Electronics did most of the visible heavy lifting. The stock rose about 4.1% to around 239,500 won. SK Hynix, despite its central role in high bandwidth memory for AI servers, gained only about 0.4% to around 1,425,000 won. Samsung Electromechanics moved the other way, falling about 1% to around 1,262,000 won. That spread matters. This was not a uniform semiconductor rally. The policy backdrop is supportive, with the government announcing a 5 trillion won fund for semiconductor materials, parts, equipment, and fabless companies, plus another 5 trillion won in trade financing for suppliers. But today's tape still shows sharp differentiation inside the chip complex. China is the clearest example of that selectivity. The Shanghai Composite is currently trading down about 0.5% at around 3,946, with the cash session still open. The macro backdrop remains difficult after July inflation data pointed again to weak domestic demand, yet energy and AI infrastructure are moving against the index. CNOOC is up about 5.1% to around 34 yuan as crude prices rise on the stalled U.S. Iran negotiations. Zhongji Inolite is up about 2.7% to around 888 yuan, while Eoptolink is up about 3.9% to around 415 yuan. Both make high-speed optical modules used in AI data centers. Their gains are notable because the sector was hit last week by reports that Washington is preparing restrictions on imports of Chinese optical transceivers. Shanghai is therefore pricing weak domestic demand, oil risk, and selective AI exposure at the same time. Tokyo's cash market is closed today for Mountain Day, so these are Monday's latest closing figures. The Nikkei 225 finished up about 2.1% at around 66,970. Again, the internal split was sharper than the headline. Advantest, a major supplier of semiconductor test equipment to the global AI chain, rose about 6.4% to around 34,300 yen. SoftBank Group fell about 1.2% to around 5,480 yen, while Fast Retailing slipped about 0.7% to around 78,700 yen. That is a warning against reading the Nikkei's gain as a market-wide technology surge. The next session will reopen into a changed macro backdrop: higher oil, a weak yen, and renewed speculation about currency intervention with U.S. inflation data approaching. Tokyo now has to decide whether Monday's chip leadership can survive that combination. So this was not one Northeast Asian trade. Seoul rewarded one dominant chip maker. Shanghai sold the broader index while buying energy and AI hardware, and Tokyo's latest rally depended heavily on semiconductor equipment. The open question is whether U.S. inflation broadens that leadership or exposes just how narrow the rebound has become. We will be back tomorrow with Tokyo reopened, Shanghai's final close in hand, and the next read on how oil and U.S. inflation are reshaping the region. For daily Northeast Asia market coverage, please subscribe. Thank you for watching AJP.